Picture this. You're in front of your latest prospect, closing the biggest deal of your life. Your pitch decks were perfect. Your scripts, flawless. And when the time came to answer the golden question of, are you ready to move forward? Nothing happened. For everyone who loves sales, this is their worst nightmare. But fear not, because in this podcast, we're unraveling the enigma behind those missed opportunities. From appointments that evaporate to presentations that felt like a Broadway show but ended in awkward silence, we're dissecting it all. Welcome to Love Your Sales.
This podcast is presented by GenHead. GenHead leverages AI so small and medium-sized businesses can find their ideal clients to make more sales. Other companies talk about AI, but we are using it every day to drive down marketing costs and increase revenue. Learn more at genhead.com. That's genhead.com.
Welcome to another episode of Love Your Sales. I am joined today by Beatrice Gutknecht. She is the founder of Badassery by B. She's about taking seamlessly boring business and shaking up how they're seen inside out through practical strategies and actions to stand out, not 69-page documents, pretty design, or templates. Beatrice, I'm so excited to have you join me today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, Leanne. I appreciate it. And so excited about the conversation we're about to have.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about your business and what you and how you help people.
So basically, I'm all about perception and breaking those unwritten rules in industries where we're just so used to following and looking to everybody else in the industry, especially when we get going. It's like there's so much to do. You're like, oh, actually, what are they already doing? Let's just follow that. We'll make it easier, but in a way that kind of makes you follow and be a little bit behind. So where I come in is to reposition you in a way where you're kind of leading your own way, and often in a way it's earlier in the process. So you stand out and you're actually sticky in minds and you're proud about your brand.
That's awesome. And in today's world, you have to be able to define your brand and yourself as something that is unique and different. Otherwise, people, they're not paying attention. And I shouldn't say not paying attention, because let me rephrase that. Today's world, we are bombarded with so much information and so many just bloops and bings, and so many things are happening that it's hard to grab somebody's attention in a way that the information is retained.
Exactly. And even more so, the idea of a rebrand has just been so commercialized. It's like Valentine's Day, and people businesses are just like, hey, so we're going to rebrand, but it's basically just changing up the colors, changing up the logo, changing up maybe some wording. But the real rebrands is what happens from inside out, right? You're making sure that the entire team has the buy-in, because otherwise it's not going to work. It's not going to stick. So, if we're talking about the Twitter to X shift, right?
Right.
I see you there going, yes. There is no alternative for tweeting, right? They didn't do it. They didn't think of it. It's just, they put that surface, but using the platform, using the software, it's still exactly the same. Maybe even you're dealing with customer service, it's still going to be the exact same. So What's the point?
Other than that, it's broken now.
Exactly. It's like surface level and real. Like if you're going to rebrand, I would recommend more like, hey, let's have a look at a refresh. You know,
So let's talk about that.
yeah,
Because this is wildly, I find it really interesting because yes, I could very easily put, stamp a new logo on my brand. I could, you know, and companies do this all the time where they're like, hey, it's and stamping a new logo, let's make something crystal clear. Rebranding is not just simply putting a new picture on where your old logo was. I mean, yes, that is, yeah, technically you're rebranding, but when I think of that, that's not, you're not, there's so much more to it. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of what you are talking about. You're talking about almost a mind shift, a mindset change, and you're talking about bringing in the team. You're talking about bringing in other people's buy-in in order to do that. So, how do you begin this process? Why do you begin this process? And what does it look like on the back end? And
so
I guess let's start with the why. Why do we do
exactly.
this?
I was just about to start on the why because everyone talks about there's the sales and marketing silos, right? That's quite frequently talked about, that there is that friction which leads to a lot of issues.
Mhm.
But I would almost push on that more, that there are business silos within all the departments.
Mhm.
So say for example, if you have someone on customer service, they have someone walk into the showroom and they're like, oh, how did you find us? What are you like, what's been going on? They will get a hell of a lot of information, which they'll just say like, okay, this is part of my job. Like I've noticed 10 other people like this over the past week that have had similar problems, but they won't pass that information on to the marketing, to the sales, to anyone else, because that's just part of like, hey, I'm just employed to get people like to be here for this 9 hours. That's it, right?
Right.
So the how I do it is going deep in terms of understanding what you've done thus far as a business, where you want to be going, that direction, and really pulling on all of those strings to like understand, what you want to stand for. What, say, for example, from your team's perspective, how do they see you represented? Like what are the values? How are you positioned to them, right? Because if you're involving them in that process, you're also going to get ideas from them, right? Of how things could be worded. Hey, like I could be saying this in my sales calls. Or like if marketing is listening to that, they're like, oh, yeah, like that will go really well with this campaign,
Right.
and have everyone on board. And it is really building out that strategy from that internal space, like, okay, directly with the founder, the owner, CEO, etc. And here's our vision, finding that position about you're doing something already in your business which is different to everyone else. So it's honing in on that.
And this goes to, the same thing that good marketing companies do, that they're attempting to do. But again, I see marketing companies come in and they're like, okay, we're going to do your marketing, but they're not always grabbing all of the information from, and it's not necessarily that they're not trying. Sometimes they run up against, okay, XYZ company, I'm working with you, and they are only working with maybe 3 contacts at that company. And at that company, those 3 contacts are the owner, the marketing director, or if it's a large company, they may have a marketing director. And if not, then it's the owner, the salesperson, the second in command, whatever it might be. And they're only getting the information from those three people, which means they're going to build their marketing strategy based on how those people see the business, which means that they're missing out on the people who are actually boots on the ground, who are living in and breathing the real world of what the clients, the customers, the prospects are all saying about the business. The experience, the customer experience, the customer journey, the prospect journey, all of that information is truly what drives interest, what drives business. And that's where I see businesses go wrong, because those are the people who are actually the ones determining whether or not they're going to buy, they're going to refer somebody, they're going to buy more, and blah, blah, blah. And, you're shaking your head like, yep, I get it. And yet I see this repeated over and over. And it's like, okay, yes, owner or CEO or CFO, I know that you know what your business does, but you're not in it every day talking to. And if the flow of information, starting with the janitor and the receptionist who will be cleaning the floor while customers are walking through, and overhearing what they're saying, very well could have the most crucial information about your business, but you're not opening the door to hear what they have to say about it. And that right there is probably one of the most valuable insights that you could get. And here's something that I, as a sales professional, as somebody who has sold I can't even, I don't even know the number of different types of products that I have sold now. I regularly go out and still allow random people to pitch me on their product. And it still to this day, it drives my husband crazy. He's like, don't walk over to that person. They're just going to pitch you. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. I do that because I want to see what's still happening in the real world. If I isolate myself from being pitched, from being sold, I'm losing that education piece. I'm losing what tips and tricks and hacks are now all happening in the real world, and I'm not educating myself to what's really going on. And I'm becoming one of those owners that doesn't know what's happening in my own business. It's the same. Yeah. And it's the same thing with now the rise of AI, the rise of all of these new tools. If you're not constantly educating yourself, you're going to fall behind. And to your point, you want to put these businesses in front of the competition. You want to try to get them doing something that's going to be sticky to, to the new possible buyer.
Or even be considered earlier in that
Right.
buying process, right? Sometimes I see a lot of businesses, because everybody else in the industry is so used to, like, okay, we've always been doing this, that perhaps there's something that you can give, okay, everybody else is doing this, let's give up that part so we can lean into this part that they're maybe have a weakness in. Or maybe there's an aspect earlier on in that process that we can lean in on and be considered even before they're working with everybody else. So say, for example, with one of my clients, their architectural hardware, where usually the industry only contacts them after the house is built, after the door frames are there, right? But say, for example, if the end client wanted these amazing fancy openings, just to come into the house, and the house has already been built, they might not have had that. So what we did was position them way earlier in that process to talk to the designers, to be help to them.
Interesting. Right. And now you're opening up the door for them to be able to offer so much more and
Yes.
have a larger market share of
And
business.
to be seen differently. It's almost like you're creating your own category. But what I encourage is both elements. If you're creating your own category, it needs to be grounded in the known, right? Like the same thing as if we go back to the going from horse carriages to cars, right? They didn't go, hey, buy our car, buy our horseless carriage. The known. So stick with the known and then adjust.
Interesting. I love that. And that goes to, I'm trying to rephrase this right. That is creating a path for people to fully understand the value that you offer, because now you're following that path of, oh, okay, I know exactly what the horse and carriage does. So now you're telling me that, oh, I don't need the horse anymore. But if you were to just jump, and I'm following your example, just jump to the car, people are like, I don't know what that does.
Yeah. A lot of the inventions failed the first time they came out because it's like, I don't know what this is. Like it was too much of a jump.
Right.
And that's why I really like I put it in my headline. It's not about having a knee-jerk reaction. It's not about a sudden virality. And that's why I have such a big issue with the Jaguar rebrand, because it's not the fact that they didn't include the car. It's not about the colors. It's the fact that they lost everything that they stand for, that they built over decades, building that trust. That in itself is gone. They could have, had a sub brand for that, another
Right.
generation, or reached out to like, okay, how can we make this relevant? So you're staying in the known, you have the existing brand. People
Right.
know that. But okay, how do we make that relevant for now? Let's work with millennials, Gen Zers who align with that.
That's really interesting. And you use the word relevant, and I like that because a lot of companies don't realize that, especially in the manufacturing space, that if they don't shift, that they are not going to remain relevant. And I'm not talking about their product necessarily. I'm talking about the way that they do business, the way that they market business, the way that they sell business. Is that if you don't make those shifts on a regular basis, that they will not be seen, they will not be, and let me give an example. I walked into a manufacturing company that, this is years ago, that I was helping staff. And I said, I was really having trouble finding your website. And she says, "Yeah, that's because we don't have one." And this was probably 7, 8 years ago. And I said, you don't have probably 10 years ago, actually. I said, "You don't have a website?" And she goes, "Yeah, we don't need one." I said, well, you, what do you mean you don't need one?" And she goes, all of our buyers, everybody that we sell our product to, we only sell like 2 items, and we're pretty much a niche. Like we're one of 2 companies in the country that sell this product. And I went, okay, that's great. But a website is not designed only to sell product. It is also to sell people on coming to work for you. It is also to create a legacy business that one day when you retire and somebody else takes over, or when somebody else gets smart to how to create your product better. And I went down a long list of all of these things. And she was like, yeah, I don't think we need one. That business will not be relevant in a couple of reasons. They're not going to be able to continue to recruit people to work for them. Because in today's world, everybody, before they do anything with a business, they want to know that they're a real boy. And I use this term all the time. Are you a real boy? Let me go look. Oh, you're not online. You're probably not a real boy. I mean, that is in today's world, that's what creates the beginning of being relevant. And if we don't lean into, and now it's even further than that. Oh, you have a website. Great. Okay. Where are you on LinkedIn? Where are you on TikTok? Where are you on Twitter? Where are you on X? Where are you on? That's where everybody wants to gather their information about who they are. And I'm not saying that, oh, unless you have an online presence, you don't exist, but it matters. It absolutely matters for multiple different things. And in some industries, it can be just a simple like, yep, here's who we are, here's what we do. You don't sell online, great, but at least having some explanation, because the younger generation, that's their security of, yep, this company exists. I'll go interview there. Great. But that's our security blanket to know that that is a real, that company or that place or that person is a real person. I mean, let me ask you, Beatrice, when was the last time that you met somebody or that you talked to somebody that you didn't immediately go and look them up somewhere online?
Never. Before every call, I will go and like stalk them and try to find out. I even started, and this has been such a time saver. I've got an AI. I'm using Perplexity. I don't know if it like helps with Pro, but I'll be like, okay, what can you tell me about XYZ person from XYZ company? And it'll just drop from everywhere. And I'm like, yes,
Right.
obviously you need to check, but
Right. Oh, AI is wildly amazing when it comes to gathering of information and ridiculously confident, but very often, inaccurate in its confidence, depending on the inaccurate information that exists on the web.
I mean, that being said, it will look through anything that mentions you. It doesn't matter how long it's been. So that's another thing that you need to be careful of, right? Like, yes,
Don't put a naked picture of yourself online and expect that it's going to disappear in 10 years.
especially if your name is there. It will pick up those things. Like if you write up articles, and that's why I do kind of be like cautious or aware of how big of pivots that you make. I always say, okay, do some pivots instead of completely rebranding into something fresh, because that way it's like mini moves.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's refocus here. I went off on kind of a tangent about the whole real boy, and so when you engage in working with a company, you start with working with, and typically who is the first person that you start working with at that company?
So usually it's the business owner or principal, because you know about
Right.
what you built.
And then how long typically does that process take in order to pull in, these, everybody, and gather that information? And then, what does that buy-in look like at the end?
So it is ongoing. At every step, we try to make sure that we're implementing. How can we say, for example, at the beginning, where we're talking about like, hey, what's your vision, mission, etc. What does that look like in play, so that they can start putting that, be it in social media, or start talking to their sales and marketing team, So it's not about like waiting to kind of put it all out like, hey, this is our rebrand. It is those little changes. And yeah, it does take time, and it is a lot of work. So I often am working with people 7 months plus to get it, not only just that strategy clear, but the implementation and then the accountability, because we have so much going on. And I see a lot of strategists who are just like, hey, so here is our 69-page document. Have fun with that, which we both know nobody's going to read that, right? It's about making sure, like, how does this look like with your sales and marketing? Probably let's bring them together on like a Zoom meeting, have like everyone talk about it, get rid of those silos, increase like people being able to put forward their thoughts without like some kind of backlash, right?
Right.
And it is understanding like the dynamics. Maybe some people are shy, so what if we put it as like a anonymous, like, hey, let's put some thoughts in a jar to start off with, or maybe like start off with one-on-one. Hey, what do you think about this? Then go to the next person. Like,
And that's sad. Like, and I think that some of this is starting to slowly go away in certain industries. I was talking to a woman the other night where I asked her, I said, would you do this video like thing? And she goes, I can't. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, I work in the nursing industry and they get really weird about us putting our faces out there. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's
why?
terrible. Like, right. I'm like, you're just doing a review for something that you do. And she's like, yeah. And if we're on social media, they don't want us representing, anything that's, personal to it because it might look bad. And I'm like, that's horrible that you still are in a discipline or working in a job where they're saying, no, you can't do like a review or a reference. And this is for a pool league. And I'm like, you can't go and say, hey, this is like a really awesome thing that I do. I really enjoy it. But I think that more and more companies are being more accepting of feedback from all levels, especially the smaller ones. Some of the bigger, huge ones are just like, you know what, just do what I tell you. I don't want to hear it. Like, we already have the plan in place. And that's sad. But some of the, like, those smaller to mid-sized businesses are like, yeah, I'd like to hear if we can improve. I want to hear what, and we'll take it into consideration. I'm not saying that they're going to they can't take everybody's suggestion. But, you know, there are some really great ideas out there and more systems in place for them to take feedback.
And I would say those companies who are actually bringing the team into the play are going to be the ones that outlast the companies who don't. Because if we're looking at Gen Alpha, Gen Z, what we were talking about before, it's the brands that have that human presence, that build a trust through that will be the ones that they choose, not the logo or the name, etc. It's like, hey, can I relate to this brand? And it's those businesses that are going to stand out and last.
Right. And those businesses that people are going to want to work at, I think that we're going to see a shift in younger generations looking to work at small to mid-sized businesses that meet their goals because they're being treated better and they're willing to give up these big bloated salaries for the work-life balance and the treatment. Like, yeah, I could go work at Nike and make a maybe $80,000 salary, or I could work at this small to mid-sized business and make a $70,000 salary, but also be treated better, have more of a work-life balance, be heard. And those are important things, really important things. And I think that the younger generation is seeing that. Like, hey, I'm willing to give up a little bit right now so that I can leave every day and not feel like I'm doing something wrong by leaving, and have vacation, be respected, be heard, be seen. I mean, I left corporate with a big bloated salary to start my own business because I wanted all of those things, which is funny because now I work 3 times as much and I'm working towards having the work-life balance back. But that being said, I regularly ask the people who work for me, like, what can I do better to support you? What do you think that we can do better to support our clients? And I hear them, I listen to them, and then we implement, because I want them to be a part of it. I don't want them to just do what I say.
Exactly. And leaning into that, that's another big part that I see missing is HR bringing in that brand strategy. Most people, like most businesses, don't even think about that. It's like, hey, are we hiring people that align with these base values? I don't mean people copying and saying the same thing, but the values need to align, right? So that way, when you're having these conversations and when you're getting everyone on board, they're like, oh, I get that. But and then they're also thinking their own like hey, maybe I can say it like this, and having that group of people like, oh, that's cool. And then they're kind of bouncing off each other, and this idea is growing. And like you said, maybe you're not taking all of these ideas, but there'll be a hell of a lot of good ideas there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So we are coming to time. And I could continue to have this conversation for the next 2 hours, but this is where you get your 30-second shameless pitch. So go for it.
Yay. So, I mean, we've covered a lot, but basically, when you're spending a lot of money on your advertising, on your SEO, marketing, sales, etc., and it isn't producing any results, perhaps it is time to look at your brand strategy and go from inside out to reposition your brand and have it stand out and have it be sticky in minds, in which case you can reach out to me on the show notes. I believe the details will be.
Yep, absolutely. We will have your contact information on the show notes. But if somebody does want to reach out to you, where is the best place that they can do that?
There's a couple of places. If you want weekly tips, I highly recommend the Badass Mob newsletter, which is on my website. You can sign up there. Every week, I go into a lot more detail than I do in regular content. Otherwise, I am very active on LinkedIn and the Art of Branding podcast.
Awesome. Again, Beatrice, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's been an awesome conversation.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
This podcast is presented by Accelerate Growth 45, your one-stop shop for business growth. Stop running your business like an operator, delaying wealth creation, and sacrificing your time. Instead, focus on building a valuable business asset, creating lasting wealth, and reclaiming the time you deserve. Accelerate your growth today and visit us at accelerategrowth45.com.
Thanks for joining us for Love Your Sales. For more, connect with Leanne on LinkedIn and be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and review. We'd love to hear what you think. Looking for a way to take your sales process to the next level? Visit us at loveyoursales.com to find out more about how Leanne can take your organization to new revenue heights. And be sure to join us next time for more great ways to love your customers so they love your sales.